Hello. Finally, I'm making a video. This is the third attempt now, but I'm feeling better. I got more sleep and for the last 2 nights, and the nights before that I did not get very much sleep, and I was all stressed out because the baby dog had to have surgical operation done at the vet clinic, and long story, it's all really it's all horrific, and it's the yin and yang of existence. So how do I start this? I didn't even know if I wanted to make a video about this, but something, an inner voice is telling me I need to make a video about this. But there's a lot of information in also that I am addressing. I'm addressing some issues and problems with all of this information that most people don't have, and I think it's important that they should have. So I am quite informed about health and healing. I have done a lot of research, and that makes me very skeptical of different treatment methods and certain practices and so on. And particularly medication, I'm very critical of it. So where do I start? I mean, I have to start like over a week back, like 8 days, 9 days back or something. We were here at this house, and we were about to go back to the other house the next day. And that night before we went back to the other house, the baby dog started to have a bleeding wart in his genital area, right on the side of the weenie on the outside. He has some genital warts there that I've already been observing for a couple of years, and I was very worried about this because he likes to be in the sun, and he likes to be lying down on the back and sunbathing with like completely sun beating down on his belly and also the weenie area, and I was always a little bit worried about this. I put baby powder on it to kind of deflect the sunlight, and I would tell him he needs to go in the shade, but he doesn't understand it, so can't cognitively understand this particular thing. So because he understands emotional things or things that pertain directly to his needs and all of that. Then he memorizes, but he doesn't understand if you just talk like you're talking to a person, right? Like you shouldn't be in the sun all the time, you should go in the shade. No, they can't understand that. So that needs a little bit more cortical mass to understand the language in its abstract complexity and all of that. So I didn't know really what to do about this. I was always worried about it, and then that one night about 8-9 days ago, the wart started to bleed. I look at it and I see it's swollen, and it looks like there's a blood clot in it, and that had kind of opened up, and he was dripping blood on the floor from it. Not very much, but like 10 drops of blood on the floor, and I completely freaked out. I cried and prayed to the blue god, and I didn't know what that was, whether it's a tumor or not. So we started to research all of this and taken into consideration many different possibilities that it could be, including tumors and all of that. And then I come across information on canine papillomavirus, and that really fits the description of this. So genital area warts caused by canine papillomavirus, and apparently they can bleed. I don't know if they grow enough. It is a form of growth. I mean, any kind of wart is, and it said it can also turn into something else. It can turn into a tumor, and that's real scary, real frightening. So I don't even know if there's a cure for canine papillomavirus. So I don't know if there is a cure for human papillomavirus either. So I have the feeling there isn't really a medication for it yet. And if there was, it would probably be quite toxic. So I like to stay away from those kind of things. But anyway, Paul put a blood stopper on it, and that stopped the bleeding. I also put baby powder on it, and I put bentonite clay on it, and then we went back to the other house. And the first night at the other house, somehow the wart had fallen off during the night. And then early in the morning, about 9:30, Paul wakes up because the baby dog is making a lot of commotion. He sleeps in bed with us, and he sees the baby dog is trying to lick that wound, but it's hard for him to reach. Particularly there, you have to go into a real extensive yogi position. So, but he couldn't really reach that, but somehow the wart had come off. I don't know whether he was able to scratch that off or bite that off, but the wart was on the bed, and the wound was large, and apparently a very large blood vessel was severed and open, and it was just pouring out 3-4 cups of blood onto the bed with pus, and looked like other things like tumor material or something like that. And Paul said, "Nikki, you have to wake up. The baby dog is bleeding out of his belly, all kinds of stuff, including the internal stuff." And I was like, "What?" It was a complete shock. I mean, I'm so sensitive. My nervous system is so sensitive that I went into a shock state, and then after the shock state, it just screamed out of me. I had no control over it. I screamed, and that's not good for the baby dog, of course, but it just screamed out of me because I was so shocked, and I was in so much despair over this. I get up, get dressed. We put the harness on him. We put one of my feminine pads on that I still had there in the drawer in the bathroom. We put a gauze around that to hold it in place, to put pressure on it to stop the bleeding, and also to prevent it from bleeding out on the floor and all of that. We drove him to the veterinary clinic. They took him in right away. He didn't want to walk. 2 women had to come and carry him into the emergency room. It's all horrible. Then I was such a mess. I was just sobbing and crying so intensively. It just happens. There's no way I can control this. And no matter how much Paul says it's not good to show emotion, it's like, tell that to my nervous system, right, in a moment like that. So they would not let us come into the ER, and that freaked me out even more. It was extreme. I was so afraid for him. Then different people came into that consultation room where we were sitting, but baby dog was already downstairs in the ER, and they were already checking him out and everything. So then the different people came in to take different information from us and signature and all of that. And then finally the veterinarian lady came in and gave us what they call an anamnesis, and she gave us the information that they have collected now from the examination. And she said, well, it doesn't, he looks stable, she said, and looks like he's not bleeding, he didn't bleed too much out, or at least he's very stable. And it doesn't look like a tumor, because I told them in the beginning that I was afraid it was a tumor, and then I was afraid that if that is a tumor and this is really a horrific surgery or something, then I don't want to put him through this. I don't want him to suffer. So they don't make they don't make the money they want to make if they put a dog to sleep. So they'll figure out a way to appease the customer and say, no, this is stable and we can do this, and it doesn't look like there is a tumor. Should I believe that? I don't know. So why were bits and pieces coming out and pus and a whole lot of blood, and why was a big blood vessel severed? Okay, that's my question. Because in a wart, there are only tiny capillaries in a wart, not large blood vessels. Large blood vessels grow into a tumor. So then she calmed us down and convinced us that she just needed to do the surgery, and he is now put on an anesthetic and pain medicine. And I asked her, was he in a lot of pain? I didn't even know. I couldn't tell whether he was in a lot of pain, but he must have been in a lot of pain. She said, yeah, he was in pain. So they gave him pain medicine and anesthetic, like to calm him down, like a sedative, strong sedative. And he's put in a kennel, and they're waiting for the surgery appointment. And she said, so the surgery was scheduled for like an hour from there or something, and that they wouldn't be through until late in the afternoon. So, and we were not allowed in there. They don't allow clients in there anymore, only the animal client. And so we had to drive back home, and that was like one of the most painful things I ever had to do, like go home and leave my baby there, not knowing what's going on, not knowing what he's feeling, and the terror and the pain he's feeling. So that's my very first accusation and my very first complaint that I can even think of is that they don't even allow the animal parents to stay there with their animal. Every vet clinic should allow the animal parent to stay with their animal at all times. Okay? They need to make accommodations for this. It's that serious. For us, serious animal parents. They are our children. They are our newborn babies. We are extreme parents. I'm an extreme animal mother, okay? You can't send me back home and let me sit at home in terror, okay? This is cruel to do. It's cruel for the baby animal or adult animal to send the parent away. The animal needs the parent there. That's the most important thing. And that's why it is cruel to me, because I feel this for him. Okay? So the whole thing is just completely a wrong management. That's a fact. Okay? And I have better ideas for better veterinary clinics. Much better. I have much better layout and concept for it. So, and I would make a better veterinary clinic mandatory if I was governor of California. This was on the Oregon side. Either Oregon and California are not very different in their politics. So, but I would be glad to be governor of Oregon or California or any state, but these states here, they are in dire needs for a reform more than any other state. That's what I think, particularly in this regard. So, but probably Missouri to those places where there's a lot of dog breeders that are moving there because they have less animal rights. So they're also in dire need for a reform, obviously. So Florida is doing much better now under Ron DeSantis. He's an amazing person. So I envy the Floridians. They really have the greatest governor there is. And we need Arnold Schwarzenegger back in California for sure. Okay. We need Jerry Brown back. We need the Good Samaritans here. We need, if possible, Elon Musk be the governor of Oregon, if that was possible. But obviously he's in Texas now, so or let him be the governor of Texas. But he really needs to be the president of the United States in the future. Hopefully, at some point in the future. So, but Donald Trump is doing a remarkable job, and he has his hands full with so many things. So it's very difficult to keep an eye on every single state, obviously. But Donald Trump came to the rescue of the people that were losing their homes in Malibu that had a fire there, and Governor Newsom wasn't doing anything about it. So Donald Trump had to come all the way down here with Melania to get a grip on that situation and fix that right away. It's too bad it's too bad Daddy has to come and fix this, and the baby Newsom is just totally incapable. It's very sad, all of this, and Newsom is obviously, whatever he's doing, that there were some good things, they were all for PR, public relations, all because the corporate cabal wants him to get reelected. That's all it is about. He's a cabalist, okay? He's a draconian cabalist. That's what he is, a political cabalist. He's a corporate agenda cabalist. And he needs to go to prison. He needs to go to an insane asylum. I already have all of that planned out for him. So hopefully that's going to happen. Hopefully that's going to be implemented at some point. Hopefully still during my lifetime. Still during Governor Newsom's lifetime. Okay, so, but anyway, so that's my first complaint, that they're sending the animal parents home or away, or they can wait in the waiting room. They have some snacks there and food and water. That's not good enough. Okay, we need to be with our animals. It just completely freaks me out if I have to be sent out. And that was also the case that was the case when our papa dog Dave, when he had to be euthanized, he had a severe stroke. He was completely, partially, half of his body was paralyzed. Happened also to the former dog, Samantha, before Kenny. So Samantha and Papa had the same thing. They had a major stroke. They were halfway paralyzed, and there's no way you can make your animal live like this. This is unacceptable, to make your animal live under such a neurological condition where they can't even walk. They always turn sideways because it has paralyzed the body and also the central nervous system. So there are parts of the central nervous system that are shut off. Okay, it's unacceptable to make them go through this. So they have to be euthanized. So I had to do that for Samantha at the same clinic. But that was when Dr. John was there, and he let us stay there with Samantha. So during that procedure, and then when the Papa had a stroke, we went there, and they sent us out. I was also crying hysterically. It was horrific, and then it was my agony was much worse, 100 times worse, when they would not let me into the ER, where they did a bunch of checking, and then they must have poked into his arms a bunch of times because he had poke wounds in his arms and right above the paw, above the front paws, poke wounds, and I don't know why they did that, and that freaked me out completely. And then he had a permanent IV in one of his arms, and with sedatives, and then also to get that ready for the lethal drops that would be administered. And so we had to wait in the office for quite a while until they finally said, okay, they came in and they gave us an x-ray. They did all of these things to get the price up, which is unacceptable, particularly when an animal is suffering. Okay, so I have a lot of problems with that. So, and then they finally said, okay, you can come in now. We're getting him ready for the lethal injection, and so at least they got me in there. So they had him on a table. Papa Dog's short, so he had to be on the table. And when he saw me, he just wanted to go home with us, but he could barely move, and that just broke my heart. And I just leaned over him and put my face in, and I said, Papa, I'm here. You are not alone. We're going through this together. And we did, and that's the most important thing, when you put an animal down. You have to be there with them. And you should be there the whole time, not be sent out in the beginning. So you should be there the whole time through, okay? And if you have a large animal, you have to lie down on the floor with the large animal and put your arm around them and tell them and talk to them calmly and soothingly and tell them, I'm here for you. We're going through this together. They feel it, okay? It's very important. So, and if you have a short animal and they're on the table, then you put your arm over the animal while they're on the table, and you talk to them and you reassure them and you tell them we're going through this together. It's very, very important energy work. And I could feel the Papa's soul leaving. I could feel that. The soul was suddenly in the entire room and very, very much relieved. Okay, so, and that gave me a relief. I felt like flopping down on the ground. I mean, that was so unbelievably nerve-wracking. I feel what my animal feels, obviously. So we've already been through this several times, several rounds, okay, and we'll be in the future as well. And it is part of life, it's part of existence. We can't run away from that, okay? They are our children. They are tethered to us through an umbilical cord. So, but in this case, when they had to do this suturing of the baby dog's blood vessel, and I had my suspicions on what that was, but she said it looks like it's not a tumor, but she may have just said that in order to charge us $1,000 for this entire thing and do all kinds of tests and other things that were just prolonging suffering and causing problems and so on. But then she kind of convinced us, and we said, okay, so I'm glad he's stable. I'm glad you can do the surgery, and we'll come and pick him up. So when we came to pick him up, and before already they called us and they said he's stable, he's coming out of the anesthesia. They had to give him another medication to bring him out of the anesthesia, and he's doing pretty well. But they have experience, so I trusted their word for it, and so I was really already very relieved when I heard that. So we rushed back over and we pick him up, and he was still extremely sedated. He could barely walk. He was also confused. He looked like he didn't even recognize me, and I just held him in my arm. I squatted down, holding him in my arms, said, "Baby dog, I'm here, okay, you're safe, it's all good." Then I had to loosen up that band that was tied way too tight on the neck, that was holding that cone in place. So I had to loosen that up, and I didn't care if they get mad or anything. There's no way I let them put like a noose around his neck like this. So I had to loosen that up, make it okay. But then I see that the entire cone was also seemed way too small. He has a real wide neck, so for his size, he's like a medium-sized dog. They gave him a cone for a regular medium-sized dog, but he has a real strong body and real strong big neck. And they don't take these things into consideration. They do things in a rush, and they do things by the book, and they don't look at the entire picture. That's another problem I have with this like a factory client treatment, almost like a conveyor belt type of treatment. That's not okay. Animals are not conveyor belt items. They are living beings, and every living being needs to be considered with all of their needs, with their personality, with their particular body shape, with their sensitivity needs. For example, Doberman are the most sensitive of all. They're also highly intelligent, and greyhounds and whippets, very, very sensitive. The dogs that look like they come out of a pyramid in Egypt, out of a Giza pyramid. Okay, those. I don't even know. They might be from out of space originally. So their ancestors. Who knows? They're highly sensitive. Okay. They need to be. This sensitivity needs to be considered and respected. All of this is very, very important. The hamsters are also sensitive. Baby dog is very sensitive to emotions and all of that, to sounds and words and the way people interact with them. Very, very sensitive. They're very people pleasing, the hamsters. That doesn't mean you can just go ahead and treat them like an item on a conveyor belt, okay? Or, they put down pit bull mix, So he is not a pit bull mix. He is a pure-blooded American Staffordshire, okay? So with an extremely wide head. So pit bull mixes do not have that wide head. The wide head comes from the original mix between a Staffordshire and an Old English Bulldog. Okay, those were the original ancestors. This combination, and then they were bred from that, and they all have this signature wide head and wide jaw. extremely wide jaw. They can break and they can cut an arm in two with that jaw. Okay, nutcracker jaw. So this is the signature of the American Staffordshire, and very highly athletic, with extremely short hair. So pit bull mixes do not have that kind of, like a velvet type of coat. People need to learn more about the different breeds. I mean, I don't hold it against anyone, but you have to also treat a pit bull mix with the same care and with the same gentleness, of course. You know, they're also people pleasers, and they're also sensitive, of course. So I'm just saying, you know, the different dog breeds, they all have different characteristics. They have slightly different needs. And all of these needs need to be taken into consideration. It's very, very important. So I learned a long time ago about the process of metastases development. Metastases are dormant cancer cells in a body that are triggered by a chemical to in turn send out a chemical that will make blood vessels and capillaries grow towards them, which makes them grow into a larger tumor. So that's what a metastasis is. It is a tumor that grew from one single cancer cell that was triggered by a chemical, and then in turn releases a chemical that makes blood vessels grow towards it. That's how it grows into a tumor. That's a metastasis. People need to know this. Okay, so when a tumor grows, the blood vessels can become quite large. They usually do not stay in the size of a capillary, which is a hair size blood vessel, like one of my hairs. Okay, that size of we have blood vessels that are absolutely tiny, that you can barely see. You know, where just the blood platelets, like the red blood cells and the white blood cells, they have to go through one after another. They can't even go side by side through. That's how narrow some of these capillaries are. And those will grow into a wart or something benign. But when it's a tumor, particularly fast-growing tumor, these blood vessels will expand. They grow themselves. They get very large. And at some point, this is like another entity, this tumor, and it has its own blood supply from your system. It's a parasitic entity, okay? It's what it is. It's what a tumor is. So that's why I had my suspicions. Because what happens, and I don't know, you know, that's why I think maybe the bleeding of, I don't know what, maybe some other words, or, I mean, a tumor can also grow, of course, without being triggered like this by this chemical. It can also, that can be the first tumor that is called the host tumor or whatever. Yeah, that can grow, of course. And then if you poke into it, if you do a biopsy, or if you cut it, or if it gets injured by something, or if you remove it, if you cut it out, the tumor sends out this signal to the whole system through your entire blood system, blood circulatory system. It sends out a chemical in the blood circulatory system that will then this chemical will then dock onto the dormant cancer cells that are scattered around, if there are some, okay, will then dock onto these dormant cancer cells and trigger them to release that chemical or some kind of hormone. I think it's some kind of hormone that it releases out, and which makes these capillaries and blood vessels grow towards it to supply it with nutrients, and then it starts growing. So the removal of a tumor is very, very dangerous because it can ignite this process of metastasis growth, and it can even cause a number of these dormant cancer cells to do that in the body. So you end up with, from one tumor, the host tumor, to you can end up with 100 tumors from that. Okay, this is very, 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 this is really horrible. This is really horrific. You don't want your animal to go through something like this. That's just cruel to wait this out to the very end, where your animal will be in terrible pain, right? Don't do that to your animal. So we are terribly worried now. I've been very terribly worried ever since then. It causes me nightmares, and I pray to the blue God that it was not a tumor, that this metastasis process does not happen, and that he can recover fully, and it was just a wart, and it was benign, and it's not creating this type of reaction. That's all I can say to this. So now the surgery was done, and there's nothing we can do about it, and I'm glad that it was done, but I'm very worried also, So, but it needed to be done. Either way, it had to be done, So there was a blood vessel that was ruptured. So he has quite a large cut, and he has stitches in. They stitched that blood vessel together, they stitched the wound together. So we have to come back to have the stitches removed in about a week. And they gave us a whole basket full of medication and antibiotics and all of that. And I looked at the ingredients, I looked at the side effects, I was horrified. And I know that all of that stuff is just really harsh on the liver, and also all of these sedatives and all of that. And so I had to really, really weigh this off. If he had been in pain, if he had not been eating, if the wound would have looked infected, if he had any of these symptoms that normally dogs have when they come out of such a procedure, then I would have definitely given him these drugs, because I didn't know what else to do, so I don't want him to be in pain. That's more important than that takes precedence, right, over the other things that you need to take into consideration, which is liver toxicity, kidney toxicity. Even had their precautionary warning. If he stops drinking water, bring him back immediately. It's like, okay, so that is obviously one of the side effects of those drugs. So, and that just told me that these drugs are just red flag. So I can only say thank goodness to the blue God. I am infinitely grateful to the blue God that our American Staffordshire, bred for extremely fast wound healing, I don't even want to say for what he was bred, for what these dogs are bred, and how they evolved through this, inevitably. But they evolved in this way where they have extremely fast wound healing and extreme high pain tolerance. So the wound looked like it was already 1 week healed, like even just a couple of hours after the surgery. It looked really dry and good, and looked like it was already healing together, the cells and all of that. And it wasn't even red, it wasn't even swollen. He was eating with extreme appetite. He was already running. We didn't want him to run, but we called him back in because we didn't want him to do a lot of running outside. But I was just amazed how fast he was recovering from this. So he was back to his normal self just like 2 hours later, completely. He was tired, but he was back to his normal self. He felt comfortable that we were there with him. Of course, he remembered us. I gave him all the love he needed. I sat with him for hours with my arms around him to give him comfort. I also helped him fall asleep. I didn't fall asleep, but I stayed with him for many hours on the bed with my arm around him, with my face on his face. That helped him a lot. It's very important, all of these things. They are our children. So the next day he was like there was nothing wrong, nothing bad ever happened, and he was frisky and running around and looking for the rats again and in the brush and all of that, and eating and drinking and everything good, bowel movement. So I was so glad that we did not have to give him any of these toxic things. So just so grateful. But again, if your dog has bad symptoms from the surgery and if there's swelling and all of this, of course that takes precedence, and you have to administer these sedatives and the antibiotics, of course. But he didn't need the antibiotics, he didn't need the pain medicine, he didn't need any of this. Then they gave us a yeast infection ear flush, which is also just pure toxic soup. Okay, I looked at it, it was horror. I never gave that to him. I made him my own ear flush with saline solution nasal spray, not the toxic nasal spray, not the medicated one, the saline solution. It's just a salt water solution. I put cedar oil mix, all essential natural oil mix with cedar, or it has cedar oil, citronella, lavender, different things, chamomiles, all. It's healing, and cedar is actually healing up the papillomavirus, believe it or not. I researched all of this. We need to do more researching. It's very important. And I put like 10 drops of that into the nasal spray, and then I sprayed that into his ears. He doesn't like anything sprayed in his ears. He freaks out, but I had to do that. Squirt it in, massage the earlobe a little bit. But then he liked it, but he just doesn't like the way that feels when something sprays into his ear in general. So I felt bad about this, and I did it again the next day. That helped a lot. And then I also cleaned his ear again with a baby wipe, which I already have been doing. But I see now that you also have to pay attention. I sometimes do this in the half dark, and I need to actually do this either with daylight or with a headlight on, and I have to go into the real minutest crevices that are in the outer part of before it goes into the ear canal. So the ear has lots of little dips and caves and ditches and all of that, so lots and lots and lots of cartilage material. You have to get gently into all of these crevices. Very important with the baby wipe, and gently wipe all of that pus out, the candida or yeast infection pus. He had this already when we adopted him from the animal shelter. He was obviously neglected in the past. And then it's very tough to get rid of a yeast infection in the ear or mite infections, very difficult to get rid of it. And he also caught the canine papillomavirus in the animal shelter, or before he got to the animal shelter. So before they rescued him, I think they rescued him in Fresno, California, at an animal shelter. So somehow someone found him and brought him to the Fresno animal shelter. Thank you, every good person who will bring an animal to an animal shelter and a homeless dog. Thank you for that, because there they can at least help him. They can do medical treatments, and even if they get euthanized, at least they get taken out of their suffering from the street. You know, a homeless dog on the street, that's the ultimate misery, you know, if they have medical conditions. So they will always take care of them, do medical treatment, and give them a chance for, like, I don't know, maybe a month or so, you know. Most of them are flowing over with animals. That's why it is so important to spay and neuter your animals. That is so important, that we don't have more and more and more and more homeless animals on the street suffering or being mistreated or whatever, you know. So or shivering in the cold. That's really the most heartbreaking. That's absolutely abhorrent. That's unacceptable. We cannot accept this as a society. Cannot accept a child shivering in a t-shirt and underwear in snow and ice. That's the same with an Amstaff. They have almost no hair. They have a velvet coat. They shiver. They get bladder infections. This is extremely gruesome torture. Okay, I've had bladder infections. I know what kind of torture that is. So I read about a case in a dog training book by Tamar Geller. She mentioned this. She said this is very important that people keep their animals warm in the house, because there was a case of a guy who had a dog on the porch on tethered, and then a Labrador, and that Labrador developed a bladder infection and died a gruesome death from that bladder infection. It can cause them to die, but with unimaginable agony and suffering that goes on for weeks. It's unacceptable. Don't allow this to happen. Pay attention. If you see your dog trying to go to make pee but has to stop, can't let go to make pee all the way, that's a bladder infection. That means the urethra or the canal for the urine release is inflamed, okay, and urine from the bladder flowing through it causes unimaginable pain. Okay, so that's right there, very obvious sign of a bladder infection. Immediately bring the dog to the vet clinic. Okay, they have to give the dog antibiotics for that. Very, very important. And so these medications, they are harsh interventions, but if the condition is chronic and absolute or acute condition of extreme severity, then you have to obviously give the treatment. You know, you have to do it. Okay. So I am all for prevention. I'm for preventive medicine. I'm for holistic medicine. We can prevent these horrible things, these catastrophes from happening by doing more research on holistic means, on plant medicine and teas and all of that. And also plant oils, essential plant oils, very important. I am massaging very, very gently, massaging him with that same amazing oil that I just recently bought. I had the intuition to buy it. Just that the day before that happened, I bought that. I thought, oh, this is good to have and I had already researched that cedar oil will help with will cure the papilloma virus, and it has cedar oil in it and other essential oils. So I thought, okay, this is very good to have as a remedy. And then I used it also for the ear flush, and I used it also for gentle massaging in the genital area, not directly on the wound, but around it, very, very gentle, and putting it on the other wart type of things that look like they could become warts. So, and that seems to really work. I also put it on his tail and butt area. I put a few drops on it because I know it goes into the bloodstream from there. It's very important to do that every day. Put a couple of drops of cedar oil on the back, or also other essential oils like citronella is very, very good as a flea repellent and has many other medicinal effects that are very soothing and good for they don't have side effect. They don't have any negative side effects, only healing effects. And patchouli oil, Rea pogostemum, I think that's the plant name. And patchouli oil from the patchouli plant that's originally from India. Very, very medicinal plant. It's very, very popular in the Ayurvedic medicine that is coming from India. So India is very, very advanced. They're the most advanced worldwide in terms of holistic natural treatment. They have amazing people in India, amazing experts on that, and just incredible plants. As you can imagine, it's quite tropical in India, and in the tropical area you have an abundance of medicinal plants that exceeds by far any other areas. So, because that's just the perfect climate for plants, for flora and fauna in general, and there are such amazing plants on this planet. But here too, I just want to show you one particular plant here that grows here in this cold and wet climate. I believe that this flower here is related to ylang ylang. Which ylang ylang is actually in the southern Asian regions, the tropical Asian regions. Ylang ylang, like the Philippine Islands and Vietnam. But ylang ylang is much, I don't know if it's related, but it looks kind of similar. But ylang ylang is much longer and it smells quite similar actually. I believe this is honeysuckle. And it has a very, very strong, amazing aphrodisiac type of scent. Absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous scent. I'm going to pick this here. So it's a gorgeous, very nerve-calming scent. I'm glad we have this here as it's naturally growing there. So I know that this is a medicinal plant. I can feel it intuitively. It's like my hair almost. It smells amazing. And the way you make medicinal oils is you collect flowers and leaves, you cut it in small pieces, you let it dry in a dry shelf, okay, on a towel. And once it's dried for a couple of months, you put it into a jar with carrier oil, you stuff it in, and you let that sit for half a year or a year. The longer it sits, the better, I guess. So I wouldn't do it longer than a year probably. But half a year is okay too. Depends on how strong you want to have it. Some people, when they make absolutes, they take out the plant material and put new plant material into the same solution to make it the solution stronger. I don't necessarily need to do that. So one time cold infusion is good enough, and then you can make skin creams with it. You can make healing salves with it if you mix that together with beeswax pellets and you let that heat up on a very, very low heat on the stove. It will melt together with the beeswax. You have an amazing salve and an amazing balm or cream. And because it's not water-based, it will have almost an indefinite shelf life. It's very good to have that as ointments, have that ready at home if something happens like a wasp sting or a burn or whatever. You have something like this ready to use, so it's very good to have that. So it's very good to get into holistic preventive medicine. I highly recommend it. It prevents a lot of suffering. It saves your beings from suffering. It makes your life much higher quality, much more pleasant. So very, very important. Okay, so Baby Dog is doing extremely well. Okay, so I am just amazed. I wanted Paul to buy valerian root, which is a better pain medicine and a better sedative than any of these other drugs. So, but he said he couldn't find it in the store. I was looking for it in that one store. I couldn't find it. So he said he finally ordered it now at Walmart. It will come to the other house. But I needed it sooner than that. But, he made it through without it even. I'm amazed. But I also gave him, at the other house, I used what I had there. I picked Pieris japonica, which is a very strong sedative plant. Obviously, if you eat the leaves, it goes through the digestive tract. It's not as potent and strong as if you make a concoction with it or make an infusion with it. So, but it worked. It did definitely work. It calmed him down, and he was able to sleep quite well with that. And I also gave him shredded salal leaves. Salal, which grows on that plateau at the other house. Salal is also a native plant here in this region, Pacific Northwest. And it is a natural pain medicine. Mild, but it works. And I took a couple of those leaves. I took these leaves fresh and I shredded in a small piece, mixed it into the dog food. I did that for several days, for as long as we were at the other house, because we have the plants there. We don't have Pieris here, we don't have Salal here, but we have ivy, we have the honeysuckle, we have blackberries that are growing everywhere. They are also medicinal. Blackberries, if you make tea out of blackberry leaves, it lowers blood sugar way down. It is a natural diabetes medication. The pharma industry doesn't want people to know about this because they want people to buy their toxic, expensive, patented drugs. Okay, not good. So I have to get Paul on blackberry leaf tea. He's gonna have he had different plants that he bought in the past and was all excited about it, told everyone about it, that he was getting it under control. He has high blood sugar, he has type 2 diabetes, which is really, really awful. It's this adult onset diabetes, and it's not even that closely related to the childhood diabetes. It's a different form of diabetes. It's when the pancreas stops working. It's very bad. But you can heal all of this. You can fix this with natural plants. People have done it. But you have to do it. You have to stick through it. You can't just make an excuse and say, oh, I'm addicted to ice cream. And, if you continue to binge on ice cream, how is the plant medicine going to work then, right? It's probably not going to work very well. Then you have to really work on all fronts with this. You have to change your lifestyle. Very important. We are fed toxic food, this society here on earth. It's because of greed, commerce. Okay. Greed and commerce, with their preservatives and their sugars and all of that, their refined sugar and all of that, which is absolutely unnatural, doesn't happen in nature, refined sugar. It's a toxic drug. Okay. That's all there is to it. I mean, don't do it. Don't eat it anymore. Stay away from it as much as you can. Eat apples. Eat a lot of apples every day. When there is harvest time, like now, mid-October to end October, this is the big harvest season. Okay, that's what Halloween is all built around. It's a celebration festival for harvest. Okay, so it's a pagan harvest festival. That's what it is. And some nations added some dressing up and some other quirky things to it, of course, but it's really meant to be a celebration fest for harvesting food. And that's what we should use this for, okay? On Halloween, if you give someone something, give someone natural food, give someone something out of your garden. Okay? You will do them a much better favor than giving them a candy bar, okay? I used to do all of this in the past in LA when I was very ignorant. I gave one child an entire chocolate bar. He was so happy. It was so sweet and touching, but do I help him with this? No, obviously not. He would have been better off if I give him 4 apples, right? And he probably would not be that excited about it because they are already addicted to sugar items at age 3. So they're like junkies already. And the greed commerce has done that to society. We need to reverse that. We need to bring this back to holistic food, whole food, vegan, and holistic plant medicine and clay medicine. Okay, very, very important. I also have been putting bentonite clay around his wound, which is also, it soaks up viruses, it soaks up pathogens, it soaks up pus, it soaks up any kind of infection stuff. It soaks up any kind of chemicals that shouldn't be there. It purifies the area. So sodium bentonite clay is a powerful healer. We've done it also with the papa. When papa was bitten by a bobcat at the other house under the cedar tree, was real terrible. We didn't even notice it until we were on a vacation. And I just happened to notice it because I poured water over him, and suddenly I see that he was bleeding on the back. And so Paul shaved that area and all in the van and over there by doors. But the beautiful lake, that sacred lake, told me that he had a wound there that I needed to take care of. I'm so grateful to that lake. So I can't really say where it is because unfortunately there are people that would like to send a hitman after me. And I don't know why. I'm not a threat to the corporate cabal in any way at all. I haven't banned already. So, but, a good-hearted, kind-hearted person can't be manipulated. And they always eyeball those type of people. But anyway, so but they're really chasing after Laura Eisenhower for sure. I feel sorry for her for that, but you know, that is the task she took on in this lifetime, and I don't envy her for that. That's a tough existence. So, and also as her great grandfather, Dwight Eisenhower, who was a real kind-hearted, caring person, and he knew way more about things than the public knew. Okay, so he knew about all of these things that tie in with one another, all of the ET alliances and all of that is actually happening beyond the knowledge of most people. Okay, but he knew he was not allowed to make a disclosure. He knew he wouldn't even be believed, and all he would do if he disclosed all of this, he would have been impeached. So he tried to stay in there for as long as he could in order to do good for this country. That's what his mission was all about, just like Donald Trump, doing good for this country. He lives for that. He could have a wonderful, luxurious lifestyle. He chose to be in there. He doesn't even take a salary for it. Okay? So he does this as a volunteer to help us, to make this country better. So those are the people that I have the highest respect for, Dwight Eisenhower and Donald Trump. Okay? Those are amazing people, and Elon Musk. I want to say this, as often as possible, because people need to understand that this is the truth. So this was the story about what the baby dog had gone through, and also as soon as we had him in the van, I see that cone was way too tight. I took the band off. I tried to squeeze that cone over his ears. That was not very pleasant because it was so tight on him, and then real tight over this wide head that was also awful, and he hated that. But I had to take that cone off. I tried to do that as gently as possible, but it was really difficult to get that cone off. I mean, it's unacceptable to give a dog a cone that's way too tight. The no scratch cones that they give after surgery, and then they gave us a completely smeared up cone from 50 other dogs before him. I mean, it's unacceptable. This is unhygienic. This is malpractice. Sorry, but I have to say this. This is unacceptable behavior from the side of those people that are just doing everything in a total rush. It's not okay. We need to have a complete reform on veterinary clinics, and if I had my say, I would create medical clinics for everyone, for free. That's how it should be. Medical clinics for dogs and humans and all beings for free, that are of the highest standard, with the best staff, with robots, with AI robots that are doing most of the work, actually, that know exactly what to do, that have the highest knowledge, that are the most professional, that know exactly how to treat every single species and breed, and every human and woman versus man, different needs, different medical attention, and all of this, giving them herbal tea, have an ER ready for people and animals. Animals are people, to have an ER ready, big, large, huge, wide space ER with absolute top-notch equipment, everything sterile, everything warm, everything friendly, everything holistic as possible, okay? You don't have to always right away give toxic shots and stuff like this. assess the situation with the client, and then act appropriately to the needs. Much of this can already be fixed with just plant medicine, or if necessary, emergency surgeries. Then you have to see what the options are and what is necessary in that moment. You might have to use something, you might have to use a sedative, you might have to use pain medicine, you might have to use a surgical intervention. It depends on the situation, okay? But in most cases, I see people coming into the ER that have a mild flu. I'm not exaggerating. I've seen all of this. I also had a friend who would run, she told me she would run to the ER with every mildest flu symptom. I mean, that just takes it too far. That just takes full advantage of the already overwhelmed staff that they have in hospitals and in emergency rooms. Most emergency rooms are completely overwhelmed. I've seen this now, okay? I've been in an emergency room 3 times in a row last year at this time in October. I've seen it. It was a disaster. It was like people that were shot were rolled in there, and I mean, I couldn't believe it. The kind of stuff. The criminals were in there hollering. Oh my gosh! There was a shooting at Walmart. It was like right around the corner from the ER. Wow, it's wild out there, you know. You shouldn't go in there with a mild flu. You might get shot, right? So, not a good idea. Like, go in there if anything else fails to help you, okay? So, it's just a last-ditch resort. If you're in extreme pain, you don't know what to do anymore. And that's what it was. That's what it was with me. I mean, I was whimpering in there in the ER, whimpering and praying to the blue god the whole time I was in there, and Paul was embarrassed about it. So the doctor even looked at the baby dog like, what is going on with him there? He had bite marks, and what is happening? Well, he didn't inquire into it. Paul was embarrassed about that because baby dog had just been bitten the night before by a raccoon all over his nose. So all of these things coming together, you know, the doctor almost like, should I put some betadine on there on those wounds? Yeah, please do it. You know, I couldn't even. I didn't know what the doctor was thinking. I was in so much pain. I said, I need something very quick. I need, and then the doctor was like, yeah, but you know, he's not allowed to give these type of narcotics and this. He has to stick with the other medication. And then I was kind of impatient because I was in so much pain. It's awful. But I feel like I want to give him one of my artworks because he was really super, and he also gave me some good advice. You know, he said, you need to, this is probably sciatic leg nerve, and you need to straighten that out, and you need to do stomach exercises, which I hate to do, but I know I have to do, you know. So I had hip problems before in the past, and I knew that I had to do something. I had to do some exercise with that. So I did belly dancing, which I learned a long time ago in Germany. I did belly dancing, and that helped a lot with my hip pain. So, but then I quit doing all of this because I'm lazy, but it's very important to do it, you know. These are just daily maintenance things for our health. It's very important. Or also yoga exercises and stuff like that. Very important to do. So, what else did I want to talk about regarding this particular subject? So, I am, from now on, in this situation, in the emergency, he had to have that stitched up, and they sent me out, and there was nothing I could do about it. But to remove the stitches. I'm not going to go away. I'm not going to wait in the waiting room. I'm going to be there with him. He's probably going to be scared if he goes back to that place anyway. So I have to be there with him. But hopefully the vet clinics where we're going to be moving to in the future, I hope they're going to be better. I hope they're not going to be so overcrowded. I hope they're going to let us stay there with our animals. I also want to adopt a pig in the future. So this is all part of my wish for the future. That gives me hope also, really hope. I have hope now. I have hope for this country because of the Good Samaritans being in office. I have hope for our life. I have hope that we're going to find solutions and move forward with our lives. I watched an amazing film made by AIs last night, an amazing story narrated by an AI, invented, created by an AI, photos created by an AI, entire thing AI created. Better than any person could do. There's no brutality in it. There is no sexual lust overly whatever. I mean, the photo was a little bit sexy, of course, but not like overly, not degrading or anything. So it's all absolutely amazing, and the story is just a story of extreme hope, you know. And I see these stories are out there now. They're flooding us on the internet, and I am grateful. This is an antidote to Islam and Sharia law. This is the antidote to demonic political sides, and it's a remedy to calm us down. It is helping us to see the world through another glass, through another lens. It's helping us to see that we are in charge of our lives, okay? That there are solutions, that we are not helpless. The Cabal has trained society to have learned helplessness. Because when you have learned helplessness, you will buy their products and you will vote for their Cabal people. You would vote. That's what they want. They want you to be afraid. They want you to be biased. They want you to go to war against the others. And that's how they get you to vote for people like Barack Obama and Joe Biden. That's what happened in the past. But people are waking up now. They see that these people are not good. They see that they're criminals, that Barack Obama and Joe Biden are criminals. Barack Obama much more even than Joe Biden. And Joe Biden, in the end, was just used, basically. You know, he was ruthlessly used. They even copied his signature and all of it. I mean, it's unbelievable, the crime that has taken place in there. It is treason level, okay? And I saw this with dread and horror. I was absolutely terrified for this country during the Biden criminals. So when the good people got in, I was just overwhelmed with gratitude. And it was because of Elon Musk that Donald Trump got that upper edge. He got the majority. He got such an overwhelming landslide majority because of Elon Musk, where the Cabal people couldn't even tweak their election even when they tried. So they tweaked a lot of elections, but when someone has such overwhelming support, they can't tweak it anymore at some point. So thank you infinitely much to Elon Musk. He is our lifesaver. Okay, you better appreciate him. You better have some gratitude, all of us. This is not about race. This is not about kings. No one is a king. if anyone was a king or tyrannical dictator, then it was the George Soros administration of the Biden criminals. Okay, that's what the real tyrannical dictatorship looks like. When you have the mafia running a country, or the drug cartels, or the human trafficking cartels, all the same. Okay, the Biden criminals are the drug and human trafficking industry. I am not exaggerating. Okay, people need to know this. So I put a lot in this video now. All of this needed to be said. If I was governor, I would do everything in my power to create a veterinary clinic, at least start there. Okay, create vet clinics that are funded by the massive fund that we have in the government, that we used to have in California, a massive fund. Okay, that's what the money needs to go to free veterinary clinics where you can do free spaying and neutering. Can you imagine how many living beings can be spared from ending up homeless on the street if people can bring their animals in for free, get them spayed and neutered? Okay, so that they don't end up with an enormous problem of 100 cats in their house. Okay. This is my plea to the world. Do it. Let's get this going. Let's get this started. And that's what I would do as a governor. I would do a lot of amazing things. But it's very difficult for a good Samaritan without money to get into such a leverage. Very, very difficult. I mean, you would really you really need to have a good Samaritan billionaire on your side for that. But anyway, I think I covered everything that I needed to talk about. Peace and love for all living beings.